The perfect society, the perfect society, four social classes. Text 14. विप्रयस्य ध्ययादीनि विप्रस्य अध्याय आदीनि षड् षडन्यस्य अप्रतिग्रह राज्ञो वृत्तिप्रजा गोप्तुर् अविप्राद्वाकरादिभिः विप्राध्यायनादीनि षड् अनस्या अप्रतिग्रह राज्ञो वृत्तिर्प्रजा गोप्तुर् अविप्राद्वाकरादिभिः विप्रस्याध्यायनादीनि षड् अनस्या प्रतिग्रहः राज्ञो वृत्तिः प्रज्ञा प्रजा गोप्तुर् अविप्राद्वाकरादिभिः विप्रस्याध्यायनादीनि षडन्नस्या प्रतिग्रहः राज्ञो वृत्तिर्प्रजा गोप्तुर् विप्रस्याध्यायनादीनि प्रजा गोप्तुर् अविप्राद्वाकरादिभिः विप्रस्याध्यायनादीनि षडन्नस्या प्रतिग्रहः राज्ञवृत्तिर्प्रजा गोप्तुः अविप्राद्वाकरादिभिः विप्रस्य of the Brahmana Adhyayan Adini, reading the Vedas, etc. Shad, 6. To study the Vedas, to teach the Vedas, to worship the deity, to teach others how to worship, to accept charity, and to give charity. Anyasya, of those other than the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas. Apratigraha, without accepting charity from others. The Kshatriyas may execute the 5 other occupational duties prescribed for the Brahmanas. Ragya, of the Kshatriya. Vrittihi, the means of livelihood. Praja Goptuhu, who maintain the subjects. Aviprad, from those who are not Brahmanas. Va, or Karadibihi, by levying revenue taxes, custom duties, fines for punishment, etc. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. For a Brahmana, there are 6 occupational duties. A Kshatriya should not accept charity, but he may perform the other 5 of these duties. A king or Kshatriya is not allowed to levy taxes on Brahmanas, but he may make his livelihood by levying minimal taxes, custom duties, and penalty fines upon his other subjects. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the position of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas as follows. Brahmanas have 6 occupational duties, of which 3 are compulsory, namely studying the Vedas, worshipping the deity, and giving charity. By teaching, by inducing others to worship the deity, and by accepting gifts, the Brahmanas received the necessities of life. This is also confirmed in the Manu Samhita. Shannam tu karmanam asya trini karmani jivika यज्- यजानाध्याप अध्यापने चैव विशुद्ध च प्रतिग्रह. Of the six occupational duties of the Brahmanas, three are compulsory, namely the worship of the deity, the study of Vedas, and the giving of charity. In exchange, a Brahmana should receive charity, and this should be his means of livelihood. A Brahmana cannot take up any professional occupational duty for his livelihood. The Shastras especially stress that if one claims to be a Brahmana, he cannot engage in the service of anyone else. Otherwise, he at once falls from his position and becomes a Shudra. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami belonged to a very respectful family. But because they engaged in the service of Nawab Hussain Shah, not even as ordinary clerks, but as ministers, they were ostracized from Brahminical society. Indeed, they became like Mohammedans and even changed their names. Unless a Brahmana is very pure, he cannot accept charity from others. Charity should be given to those who are pure. Even if one is born in a family of Brahmanas, if one acts as a Shudra, one cannot accept charity. For this is strictly prohibited. Although the Kshatriyas are almost as qualified as the Brahmanas, even they cannot accept charity. This is strictly prohibited in this verse by the words apratigraha. What to speak of the lower social orders? Even the Kshatriyas must not accept charity. The king or government may levy taxes upon the citizens in various ways by revenue duties, custom duties, realization of fines, and so on, provided the king is able to give full protection to his subjects to assure the security of their life and property. Unless he is able to give protection, he cannot levy taxes. However, a king must not levy any tax upon the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas fully engaged in Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to this beautiful Vrindavan, Govardhan, feeling the presence of the Goswamis, what they have provided for us. Thank you. So, this is a very beautiful verse. The context is Yudhishthir Maharaj is conversing with Narad Muni after hearing the beautiful, godly, saintly characteristics of Prahlad Maharaj. That if this is how a devotee of Krishna looks like, tell me more about the qualities of a ideal human being and how can society be organized around that. Yeah. So in this chapter, Narad Muni is telling Yudhishthir Maharaj, he's quoting Lord Vishnu himself. How does Lord Vishnu see the organization of society? So we'll be discussing today. This is a basically a Vedic sociology. How would Vedic society look like? Yeah. And this is based not just on, usually when we talk of organizing society, it it includes ethics, political theory, sociology. How should one organize society? Current thought is it should be organized so that the well-being of the people is maximized and their suffering is minimized. But what is the understanding of well-being? When we have a materialistic vision of development, the society is also organized around a materialistic viewpoint. But here, as we see in this chapter, Yudhishthir Maharaj is asking a very pertinent question. Let's look at this. This is the second verse of this chapter. Yudhishthir Maharaj is asking, what is that dharma by which a human being attains the highest goal? Varnashram achara yutam yat puman vindate param. So here we are not talking of material well-being and organizing society around the material well-being of its citizens, but param. What dharma should an individual and society practice so that they attain the ultimate goal of life? So right from the start, it is a society based on ultimate goal of life. Param is the key word. So this is not a social system for peace and prosperity. That is mundane. This is a system for achieving spiritual perfection. Yeah. And here, what kind of dharma do you want society to be organized around? The dharma mentioned by Yudhishthir Maharaj is Nrinam Dharmam Sanatanam. So, two words in this verse, number two, Sanatan Dharma and Param. They capture the whole essence of our the discussion around which Narad Muni is going to present the four social classes. So, what is Sanatan Dharma? It is not Hindu Dharma. It is not Hindu culture. Sanatan Dharma, as we know, is based on the identity of the soul. Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. So the idea is all of us have a universal instinct to serve. Now, it is not a question of whether we have that instinct. The question is where do we direct that instinct? So this presentation by Narad Muni is basically the idea is the universal impulse of service that we have, seva, how to redirect that from rather than serving Maya towards serving Krishna or the absolute truth. That is how Narad Muni defines sociology. For Narad Muni, sociology means the vritti to serve should be redirected from Maya to Krishna. How can we arrange society so it functioned in this way? So Narad Muni starts with, I'll tell you what Krishna thinks about this. Yeah. Narad Muni says in verse 5, after offering his obeisances unto Lord Krishna, so he's saying, I'll tell you the principles of eternal religious principles, Sanatan Dharma. Who? Did I compile a book? We the people? No, he says Narayana Mukhat Shrutam. This has come from the mouth of Narayan. Therefore, this becomes important. So here, first, Narad Muni starts by saying, we're describing a list of 30 qualities. That is how he starts by the answer to Yudhishthir Maharaj's this question, what dharma should be practiced to attain the highest goal? He starts by giving a list of 30 qualities. So it means that our practice, our spiritual practice is based on virtues. Bhagavad Gita is full of virtues, qualities of a brahmana, of a devotee. Why, even before the discussion of Varana starts, there is a list of 30 qualities given. What is the importance of these qualities? They create a threshold between animal and human. If you don't have these qualities, how are we different from animals? And it gives a basis of morality. So, our philosophy or Vaishnava philosophy is based on, the morality comes from the philosophy itself. In a lot of Western philosophy, there is separation of morality and philosophy. People can discuss philosophy, but whether to practice morality, that's a different discussion. But the beauty of Sanatan Dharma is that morality is embedded in the philosophy. The philosophical texts start by giving qualities or virtue ethics. So the 30 qualities Narad Muni describes can be broadly classified into four categories. One is personal discipline. How should you live personally? Shaucha, Satya, Dama, Shama, Brahmacharya, Santosha, Arjavam. These are what you practice for internal discipline. Second category is social ethics. How would you interact with others? Yeah. There are your needs and there are others' needs. When you push your needs over others' needs, that aggression. Yeah, when you don't express your needs and allow others to, say, I cannot express, then that is passive, the opposite of aggression. But what here being presented is there has to be a sensitivity in our dealings. What are the ethics? Daya, ahimsa, dan, samadrik, and seva. So these are how would you deal with others. The second category of qualities. The third are spiritual, or you know, when you go beyond social dynamics, you reflect, you contemplate. So there are some qualities around that. Mauna, silence, reflection. That has taken the forms of mindfulness, journaling, and so many things today. So it all is mauna. And atma vimarshanam, introspect. You know, how have I taken decisions? What are my priorities? How do I identify myself as? So this is contemplation. This is very important. And a very unique quality mentioned by Narad Muni is seeing the futility of misdirected human effort. That there is human endeavor at large, but it is misdirected. To be able to see that, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan defines detachment as being able to see the fault in sense objects. We see sense objects, it's tempting, it's glittering, we fall prey to it. But when you start to see that, oh, dukkha yonayo evate, they glitter, but they are dukkha yonayo evate. So when you are able to see the fault of sense objects, that automatically gives rise to vairagya. Vairagya is not repression, it is the ability to see the reality. And then detachment follows. So this is nrinam vipareya yaksha, to see the futility of misdirected human effort. And finally, the last set of categories given by Narad Muni are explicit direct bhakti practices: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smarana, Dasya, Sakhya, Atmanivedana. So bhakti is added at the end. It's not just, the final category. It is the culmination of all other categories. And bhakti integrates all other qualities. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana. So by practicing bhakti, all other qualities that we have discussed above, they also appear in us. And then Narad Muni begins to present Varna. That is the topic of this chapter. How is Varna determined? Not by Janma. Yeah, there is no Janma or Jati requirement. It is based on Lakshana, symptoms. Very clearly, there is no birth based designation or no hereditary entitlement. Yeah. How? So this makes people who claim that our culture is casteist, they should be reading the 11th verse of this chapter. It is not based on, this is anti-casteist. This is anti-elitist. It is clearly based on what Lakshana, Guna, Karma, Vibhagasa. So, but the important part is, yeah, there is no, it's based on Lakshana, it is not based on Janma. So, it is not anti differentiation. That is a difference. We are not professing or propagating equality. While we are saying that it is not based on caste or sect or identity or birth, we are still saying there is a difference. Unlike the modern thought that everyone is equal. No, depending on the lakshanas one demonstrates, there are certain categories. That those categories are defined as the four varnas of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. How do you gain this? So, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that this status of Dvija is not a entitlement by birth or by heredity. It is a training and education, a process of continuous samskaras. Since birth, starting from Garbhadan samskara, have you collected the right samskaras? Have you practiced a life of discipline? Have you taken responsibilities according to your varna? Then you are given the position of a Dvija. Otherwise, even if somebody is born in a family of Brahman and without the training and education, they are still Dvija Bandhus. They cannot automatically get qualified as Dvijas. So we know this already, but since the topic is Varnas, let us understand what each Varna represents. So Brahmanas represent clarity, means clarity, wisdom, and restraint. Restraint of senses, simplicity, satisfaction. These are the virtues of Brahmanas. So restraint, clarity, wisdom. Kshatriyas, they are virtues are courage, governance, protection. That motivates them. Vaishya, on the other hand, is about sustenance, economy, care for land and cows. And Shudra are around support, service, and stability. So all these, Srila Prabhupada always used to compare the four varnas to the body, the head, the hands, the belly, and the feet. So is one more important than the other? No, none of them is dispensable. We all need to function together. So this is like, this is a beautiful organization. According to one's nature, one practices certain livelihood and certain social category. So in the 12th verse, Narad Muni concludes the question of Yudhishthir Maharaj, what is that dharma which helps one reach the highest goal? He says, Nrinam ayam paro dharmaha. This is the supreme dharma for all human beings. What? The 30 qualities, according to Lord Vishnu. So this is dharma according to Narad Muni. And same in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, when Sri Krishna describes what is jnana, he gives a list of qualities. It's not information or the ability to intellectualize, it's virtue. So that if we cannot understand, jnana means virtue, dharma means virtue. It is very difficult to, here Sanatan Dharma places character first, places virtue first. So what is the supreme dharma for all human beings? That which satisfies Sarvatma. This is verse 12. Sarvatma yena tushyati. And there are so many verses in Srimad Bhagavatam which speak to the same effect. Yeah. So bhakti is not a belief, but bhakti is presented here as the culmination and the integration of that which integrates all other virtues. All the 30 qualities can come together in bhakti and they can arise from bhakti. So what we are discussing here, Varnashram, this is, we can look at it as a universal model of spiritual humanism. Universal means it is not based on any sect, only Hindus, only Indians. No, it is a universal, non sectarian model of spiritual humanism because the goal is param. The goal is not social peace and prosperity like ordinary politics. Their goal is peace and prosperity. Our goal is param. So it is a universal model of spiritual humanism. That is what Varnashram is. So basically, it's an ecosystem of roles and responsibilities. Each Varna has its rights. Brahmana can accept charity, but it also has its corresponding responsibilities. They have to live a simple life, they have to practice detachment. Kshatriya can tax the citizens, but Kshatriya has the duty to protect the citizens also. You know, take risk, take risk of their own life. So every right has a corresponding responsibility. So it is an ecosystem of rights and responsibilities, nothing more complicated. But it is all based on character, the 30 qualities. It is Varnashram is based on virtue. If the individuals participating in Varnashram those don't have these 30 virtues, it doesn't, it will not mean anything. So coming specifically to this verse, the duties of a Brahmana. And it is very interesting. It is, yeah, it is not, we are not discussing Krishna Leela today, but this is also important. We aim for transcendence, but we also deal with our conditioning. So Srila Prabhupada said, yes, we want to reach that highest goal, but a stable society will need Varnashram. Prabhupada did give sannyas to a lot of his early disciples. That was also in need of the hour. But he said we need a Varnashram. That is the next part of our society. Varnashram is the stable ground on which we can practice. Why are we practicing sadhana bhakti? To ultimately get ruchi, bhava, and prem, correct? But that is our aspiration, that is our aim. But practically, most of us are at anartha nivritti only. So therefore, while we aim for transcendence, we also have to deal with our conditionings, current level. That is organization. That is what ISKCON as an organization has to take care of. So the six duties of a Brahmana, Shad Karma, are Adhyayan, study. Yeah, Adhyayan is to study scripture. Adhyapan, to teach scripture. So there are six, but three are essential and three are supporting. So Adhyayan is necessary, Adhyapan is supporting. Then is Ijja, worshipping the deity. That is essential. And Yajana, engaging others in worship. That is secondary. Dana, to give charity, is primary. And Pratigraha, to receive charity, is secondary. So this is so interesting. The latter three, or the three secondary duties of a Brahmana, they exist only to support them. So we will see what it means to be a Brahmana and what does a Brahmana represent and how should they be protected. And when we always hear Brahmanas and cows should be protected, what does it mean? Physical protection, have bodyguards around the Brahmanas because they are weak and frail? No, this is way deeper. So let us look at the life of a Brahmana. A Brahmana does not work for income. A Brahmana survives by voluntary social trust because society will voluntarily support them. Therefore, that's how they manage their livelihood. So, do you think it's a good way? No. They are intentionally kept economically fragile and vulnerable. They don't have financial security. It's not a weakness, it's a design of the system. Why we'll see that. As soon as if the Brahmana takes salary or is dependent on royalty, As soon as truth is dependent on power, it becomes propaganda. If I'm dependent on someone, I cannot critique them, even if they're doing something wrong. That is the role of a Brahmana, to be the conscience, the soul of society. And the soul should not be corrupted. That is what Srila Prabhupada meant by protecting the Brahmanas. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada here gives, in this purport, gives the example of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. They were pure Brahmanas, Saraswat Brahmanas, well versed in all scriptures, all languages. But just because they took to the service of Nawab Hussain Shah, they became Shudras. Now, this is not meant to be a social insult. It is actually, they are changing their function. So it has to be labeled. When a function changes, the label has to change. So the society, Varnashram, is very strict. If you start serving, you cannot be Brahmana because you are not independent anymore. And Kshatriyas, in the same way, although they are courageous, disciplined, and they almost receive the same training as Brahmanas. In Gurukul, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas would go for training. Although they have the same qualities and training of Brahmanas, still they should never accept charity. That is the second injunction in this verse. Why? Because if somebody in power, if they accept charity, then it brings a moral obligation. If I am the director and I am receiving gifts, I cannot be impartial anymore. And power always has to be impartial. So therefore, the second principle is charity is never to be accepted by Kshatriyas because they represent power. As soon as they receive charity, power becomes partial. And if power becomes indebted to someone, then it is a very dangerous situation. And the third thing this verse mentions about is taxation. Taxation is not the right of the kings, it is conditional. Conditional means it is conditional on protection. If the king protects the praja needs to pay a tax. If no protection, no tax. So let us understand this, that this is not the divine right of kings that you can tax. It is conditional on dharma. If you levy taxes on your praja but are not protecting them, then it is adharmic. It is illegitimate. And the last part is this: Kshatriyas may tax everyone but the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Why? Because Brahmanas, first of all, they are not working for any income. They are not anyways accumulating wealth. They are living by minimum needs. They are contributing to society. How do you think a Brahmana contributes to society? They are poor, they have no power, they have no influence, they're useless. Adhyapanam, yes. They contribute what is called non material goods. Today's society values only material goods and services. Brahmanas contribute non material goods like education, providing a spiritual culture, providing a role model, ethical restraint, acharya. Hello, society should have a role model that these qualities need to be practiced. This is virtue. So, and one very important function of a Brahmana is also critique of power. These are the non material goods that they contribute to society. Critique of power means not criticism. There's a difference between criticism, which is cynical, dismissive, and critique. If something is going wrong, you should have the courage to point out. If you don't point out adharma, then you are party to adharma. If you stay silent when adharma is going on, then you are also on the side of adharma. So, critiquing when such a situation occurs. So, therefore, a Brahmana is meant to be the independent conscience of society, not influenced by anyone, and be able to speak. Because the nature of, like, what are some examples where critique of power can be done when some policy is creating moral degradation of society? You allow alcohol, you allow illicit activities legally. So Brahmanas should speak up. This is not right because this is increasing immorality. Yeah, in first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we see Varna Sankara being mentioned. So that is critique. Point out any faults which lead to degradation of society. Or if somebody, a leader is going to war, a Brahmana can point out this war is not out of necessity. This is out of your pride and ego that you're waging this war. So therefore, this is a check and balance system in society. And why? How can a Brahmana say all this? Because they are not on any payroll, they are not running for any office, they are not dependent on any favor. Therefore, they can critique power. So, this is the unique role and contribution of a Brahmana in society. In our society, ISKCON, interestingly, we have what is called as parallel lines of authority. There's one line of authority which is spiritual because this is a spiritual organization. Those who are more spiritually advanced guide others who are newer. So that is a guru, a guide, a mentor, a shiksha guru. That is the spiritual line of authority. But we also have to manage the society. So there is a managerial line of authority where there is the temple president, the GBC. So it is a little complex because sometimes the same person can play both roles. So the Brahmana is also being a Kshatriya sometimes. And okay, we understand in Vaishnav ultimate Gaudiya philosophy, we are none of this. Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Shudra Kiba Noy. Yeah, Naham Vipro na yeah, na नापि वैश्यो न शूद्रो किंतु प्रोध्या निखिल परमानंद पूर्णामृताब्धेर gopi bhartur pad kamalayor das das anudas. So the idea is, if and only if, in the spirit of being the servant of the servant of the servant, you take on any role, it doesn't matter. But it has to come from that place of Jivara Surupai Krishna Nityadas. If you are identifying with the Varnashram role more than identifying as a servant of Krishna, then it is problematic. It is Varnashram. So, how does a Brahmana influence? Because a Brahmana does not have authority. There is no positional power. All a Brahmana has is personal power. So a Brahmana can advise. Before people become leaders of society, give them good education, shape their character while they're still young. Or a Brahmana can give counseling. Yeah. So why is this rule so strict that as soon as a Brahmana accepts service, they become a Shudra? Because if your survival depends on pleasing someone, then you cannot remain truthful. Yeah, you cannot remain fair and unbiased. So the role shifts. What did we discuss? That a Brahmana represents the independent conscience of society. From that, if a Brahmana takes income, takes a salary, it becomes a service provider. So therefore, the example of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami is given. And Vaishnavas. Why should the Kshatriya not tax Vaishnavas? Because Vaishnavas are already living simply, they're consuming minimally. Their lifestyle and behavior, they are generating social trust. Yeah, people trust them for their character. So if you see someone who has good character, inspiring others to live morally, they are in fact reducing the cost of governance for the Kshatriyas. What did Srila Prabhupada say to the police commissioner in London? He said the crime is increasing. Srila Prabhupada said, we have a way to reduce crime. What? You give us the city hall, we will do kirtans and the crime will reduce. So it may not seem, oh, what does Prabhupada mean? How will kirtan reduce crime? But this is how it means. If we become Vaishnavas and Vaishnavas influence other ordinary citizens, the overall cost of governance goes down, crime goes down. So therefore, somebody who's already giving everything they have is reducing the cost of governance. Why should the government tax them? So this is the logic of not taxing Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. So what is the conclusion of this? That there are three different institutions or three different roles. truth, power, and wealth. Truth is represented by Brahmanas, power is represented by Kshatriyas, and wealth is represented by Vaishyas. How should these three interact? This is how sensitively the Varnashram society is designed. Because, if truth depends on power, that means truth will have to follow whatever the powerful say. And whatever they say will become a propaganda rather than actually being truth. And if power, those who are in power, they depend on wealth, those who are wealthy are influencing those who are in power, then it leads to corruption. That is how elections are won nowadays. Those who are wealthy give funds and then they win. And once they win, they give favors to those who gave them funds. So it's called crony capitalism. They are cronies, they're friends of each other. The Kshatriya and Vaishya are friends. It should not be allowed. There should be separation of powers. This is Varnashram. And if wealth depends on power, if Vaishyas, uh, those who are powerful, like the Kshatriyas, they extract wealth or they simply, just take others' wealth. So if wealth depends on power, it becomes exploitation. So the idea of Varnashram is that these three, truth, power, and wealth, should be separated. And the separation should be mutually respectful. It is not, that one is better than the other. We understand what our nature is, we understand what different categories of society are, and accordingly we separate power and truth and wealth. Isn't this so beautiful? There is automatically a check and balance system. The king who has, see, what are varnas? They are born out of gunas. According to certain gunas, we fall into certain varnas. So the king who is driven, who is ambitious, who is courageous, is guided by a Brahmana who is clear, beyond ego, has clarity. So the Brahmanas guide the power, but they are aloof from power. The Brahmana will guide the king, the council, the king, but the Brahmana will go back to their ordinary hut and stay. They will not participate in power because what is the problem with power? Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that is known. Therefore, somebody who is representing power is guiding by somebody who is independent and evolved. So this is how Vedic organization of society was. So we being when how does it look in today's terms, modern society? We are a educational institute. We are a cultural institution. So we are devoted to education, culture, teaching values, yeah, teaching ethics to people. So therefore, we should not be treated like other economic institutions. Why are we given a tax-free status? It is not a favor. It is because we are doing something which is a long-term job of the government. We are creating a evolve. We are helping in the evolution of human society. Therefore, the government helps us. We are not taxed like profit-making organization. Otherwise, imagine if there was tax on Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, then what would we do? We would all think of productivity. Oh, we need more output. So that is not how a Brahmana functions. They are not driven by productivity or taxation. And there are many political thinkers of today who also align with these teachings of Bhagavatam. It is not that this is outdated. Current political leaders also say the same thing of separation of powers, mapping different institutions in society. If judiciary, government, NGOs, they are not separated, long-term society will not be resilient. So these are already integrated. So very powerful principles being presented in Bhagavatam in this chapter. So this is very insightful. We can use it in our management and leadership roles. I'd like to end with also giving how this verse and these principles can be misread. Yeah, they're trying to teach something, but somebody with ill intention can twist the meaning. And that is what happens in society when people outside our tradition want to interpret our tradition. Yeah, for example, Brahmana should not pay tax. So, misreading could be it is birth based, it is hereditary entitlement. Anyone who is born in this family will not be taxed. No, that is not what the verse is saying. So it is most a lot of times misread as oh, tax exemption is based on birth, and it is not. Surprising. All the caste politics which goes on, the favors and the privileges given on caste. They have always been a tool for politicians. So we know a Brahmana is one whose role is based on function, lakshana, and conduct, character. It is not based on birth. So there is no question of birth based tax exemption. A second misreading could be that Brahmanas are independent. Does it mean that Brahmanas are above the state? Or do Brahmanas have hidden political authority like Chanakya? No, that is a misreading. We are not positioning Brahmanas as they have invisible power. No, that's not what we are saying. They actually have no coercive power. Coercive means ये करना ही है. When a Kshatriya says, when a government says you have to do this, the laws, the tax, they are coercive. They have authority. They can tell you what to do. Brahmanas have no coercive power. They can inspire, they can counsel, they can guide, they can role model, but they cannot command, they cannot punish. So, Brahmanas are structurally, Brahmanas are weak. They don't have the same authority as Kshatriyas. Kshatriya ने एक बार बोल दिया, that becomes a order. Brahmana बेचारा बोल रहा है. And people don't realize they keep committing the same mistakes. So a Brahmana can only guide, inspire by moral character. You see, you might think that is a weakness of the system. It is not. The power that a Brahmana has is based on their character. And one powerful Brahmana or a Vaishnava can inspire an entire community. And all Kshatriyas and Vaishyas can then support such a far-sighted Brahmana or Vaishnava leader because they don't have that vision, they don't have that purity. So, what is of value in society is what the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas have, which is faith, purity, vision, compassion. Then all the wealth in the world is available to serve those goals. All the power can align. Another misreading could be that we are not against governance. We are not saying that taxation hona hi nahi chahiye. We are saying that taxation cannot be unconditional. The government keeps taxing and increasing the rate of tax, and the citizens have no forum to ask any questions to the government. What are you doing for us? There are so many problems. So it is a conditional taxation. Don't misread it as, oh, Vedic culture is against taxation and modern governance. No, we are not. Tax, but provide also. There should be transparency, there should be performance, and there should be justice. That is how we balance. And this is what the verse says, but because this topic is on Varnashram, I'll also like to, present what Srila Rupa Goswami's understanding is of Varnashram. While Varnashram is to help us to serve, it is said here, Sarvatma yena tushyati. Do your role in society in such a way that Sarvatma or Vishnu is satisfied. So does it mean Bhakti and Varnashram are same, supportive, complementary, or opposite? So for that we have to understand from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. We have discussed that the Varnas come from our gunas. Somebody who is in Sattva Guna is inclined, they have characteristics of Brahminical nature. Rajo, Kshatriya. Rajo and Tamo mix, Vaishya. So these are gunas direct or gunas dictate Varna. This is very important. So here in the 11th chapter of the same of 11, sorry, the 5th chapter of 11th canto, it is said that even those who are in Varnashram, if they fail to worship the personality of Godhead, who is the source of their creation, they'll fall down from their position. So Varnashram without Vishnu worship is going to lead to degradation. So the Varnashram that we are presenting is for Tattosha Karanam, for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Without, if you remove Vishnu from the picture, it is not going to lead to any elevation. It's only maybe it will lead to some peace and prosperity, but we know what peace and prosperity is possible in the material world. So it all depends on adhikar. That is the essence. If somebody has an adhikar for bhakti, if they don't practice varnashram, it is not a fault. That is how we should see it. So there are verses in Shastra which encourage one to practice varnashram, but we should understand those verses are to encourage people who yet do not have faith in bhakti. Correct? So first, think of society as the lowest level being irresponsible. I don't want to take any responsibility. No, to them, the Shastra says you have to take responsibility. Devarshi Bhutaptananam Pitrinam. Everyone has so many obligations as soon as they are born. So you should fulfill your obligations. So that is going from irresponsibility to responsibility. But idea is not to stay at responsibility. Idea is we situate in Varnashram so that you can remember Vishnu constantly. And from there, you can elevate into a spiritual consciousness. So, somebody who has adhikar for bhakti, if they think of doing this Varnashram duties, it is a distraction for them. In their smaranam and bhajan, this becomes a distraction. If you're already in Ruchi Asakti or Nishta, and you think of doing your Varnashram duties, it is a distraction, an interruption to your devotional service. What is the difference? How can one go from Varnashram to Bhakti? Sarvadharman parityajamam ekam sharanam braja. In the same verse, Devarshi Bhutapta, Sarvatma, again, same as this verse, Sarvatmana yas maranam sharanyam. As soon as you take Sharan of Vishnu, yeah, you are having surrendered Sharanam, all your prarabdha karmas are gone. No prarabdha karmas means no gunas. No gunas means no varna. Therefore, no need to perform varnashram duties. So you see the gradual elevation from an uncivilized life to varnashram life, from varnashram life to surrender and going beyond the gunas and prarabdha karma to a transcendental devotional life. So the rules of varnashram or scriptures, they do not apply to liberated persons. Why do we need varnashram? Because all of us, because of our previous lives, we have accumulated certain impressions. That is called swabhava. Swabhava gives us a certain identity in the varnashram system. I have the nature to, I cannot tolerate injustice. So that is your swabhava. You become a kshatriya. You cannot tolerate ignorance. You are driven to learn wisdom, gain clarity. So according to our previous swabhava, we gain an identity which places us in varnashram. But the idea is we don't have to get stuck at it is meant to purify our swabhava and lead to swarupa. So beyond varnashram is bhakti. If one, this beautiful verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, which presents that when are you qualified to perform bhakti? तावत् कर्माणि कुर्वीत न निर्वेद्येत यावत् मत् कथा श्रवणादौ वा श्रद्धावान् यावन् न jayate. So one should continue to perform the daily and periodic varnashram activities until one actually becomes detached from material sense gratification and develops faith for hearing and chanting about me. So varnashram is meant to take us cultivate detachment and faith. And once you have developed it, then you don't need to practice varnashram. You should do pure devotional service alone and exclusively. So while we discuss varnashram, we should know what is the place of varnashram in Uttama Bhakti. It is not an anga of devotional service. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any thoughts or questions or comments? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for your class and insights. You spoke briefly about journaling,
Mm-hmm.
introspection, and I've been connected with this community, Radha Gopinath community, for some 2 decades now. I've always seen that the community is taking a leading role in ISKCON worldwide. So I'm just wondering, if there's not enough introspection that can lead, as Satchidananda Maharaj always puts it, to spiritual indigestion, and then the tendency can easily be to attend programs just for social, because of social pressures. I'm just curious to what extent these kinds of tools are being promoted in brahmachari ashram, in counseling systems, and of course the counseling system itself already hints at
Hmm.
guidance in applying the spiritual practices. I'm just
Right.
curious where we're at, because these communities take a leading role, and I can see the necessity for it in ISKCON worldwide. It will protect devotees and help. So I'm
Absolutely.
just curious.
Absolutely. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, sure. So Prabhu's question is, although Prabhu is a senior devotee and with a lot of experience, his question is that if, as a society, we do not promote and practice contemplation, we are not mindful of what we are doing, it'll lead to spiritual indigestion or it'll stifle our progress. Is that right? So it may. No, it will. The idea is we cannot talk about the entire society as one. Our society is not a monolith. I mean, more you travel, more you see different societies having different moods and different practices. So, although we are one international society, we have many small individual communities. So, let's talk at a community level because that's where we can change, right? That's where we can bring change. Uh, you're right. As our organization grows, when we were young as an organization, the focus was on swadhyaya, on sadhana. That's what attracts people. People are not attracted by organization. Then it becomes, like some religions, when they become big enough, they go from being spiritually alive to just becoming a religious denomination. This is a religion and you have to become a member of it. And if you're a member of it, that's it. That's done. You just need an affiliation, and that affiliation will take you to heaven. So if we don't keep our society, our community spiritually alive, it'll lead to becoming a denominational society. It'll be just affiliation, social performance. So that is the role of a Brahmana. While to what does it need to run a society? Followers and funds. So funds, Vaishyas are good at collecting funds. Kshatriyas are good at managing. So managers and fundraisers. So Brahmana is required or not required? A Brahmana is required because, as we discussed here, Brahmana is the independent conscience of society. So a Brahmana has to step in and say, this is a spiritual society. Membership is good, funds are good. But like Prabhupada said, even in his time, it is now time to boil the milk. Boil the milk means contemplate, focus. Our organization will keep growing. It is on autopilot. So we cannot expect the organization to take the responsibility of our personal spiritual journey. We have to form Sangha. Swajatiya Snigde. Swajatiya Ashaya Snigde. Srila Prabhupada has created a society, and society gives you opportunity to interact with like-minded, loving devotees, affectionate devotees. That Sangha becomes your place of nourishment and the contemplation that you're seeking. So, yes, it is facilitated within the broader society, but society will give a framework. But then you have to practice it at a collective level of your Sangha. Yeah, I would say, I'm a very small person to make any comment on this, but because I have the mic today, I have seen it happen in phases. There is a phase of growth where there might not be a lot of conscious thought, and then there is a realization, oh, we have like drifted. And then we bring it back, we practice contemplation, we increase swadhyay, sadhana, the focus. It's basically the management, and we have a care committee here. So there is a management body and there is a care body. So the role of care is that of a Brahmana and a Vaishnava. If always maintain the focus on spiritual nourishment and growth. It might not be managerially advantageous or sensible, but still you have to do it. Therefore, the care is an independent body of management. So this is the way you institutionalize it. You give a platform to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and they will maintain the focus of the society on sadhana, on swadhyaya, on contemplation. So this is how I have seen it, and it works. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Comments?
Mohan Vilas Prabhu, I mean, he already answered, but I was just thinking about what you said about truth and power. Someone who wants to pursue this path, will he not feel sometimes insecure what will happen in my future, whether the one in power may protect me? I'm just giving, you said that there is a system.
Mm.
So, and there are some who are following truth, they are also there in this side.
Mm.
So, well, that will be ideal, isn't it? Because they understand.
Yeah.
Huh? So I'm just thinking about maybe, widows.
Mm.
Oh, husband is there, but husband is not there now, and she has given a life. Now, will she be taken care of, or if not, somebody may hesitate to surrender their life because who knows. Today it's okay, but tomorrow times may change, and the one who is in power may. Same thing goes to
Yeah.
renounce order.
Mm.
Of course, our philosophy says we have to depend on Krishna. Yes, he takes care of everyone. But if, like,
Mm.
the way you said, the king is the one who he will see that traditionally.
Mm.
uh, the power he can be a critic, he can, but he's fully independent. But in our are you independent to criticize or correct?
Critique.
Critic.
Not criticize. Criticize will become Vaishnava Aparadh because everyone is a Vaishnava in a society of Vaishnavas.
At the same time, I was thinking, but during Vena's time, but they had the power.
Yeah. They had spiritual powers.
Yeah, but they had the but here you didn't mention about that.
Yeah, because I think nowadays we don't have that kind of power. We cannot burn someone or. Yeah, your question essentially is will the Brahmana always be protected?
The government is not protecting you.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking of.
You don't even you're not even respected, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
what
mean,
is the question of protection?
we are talking of our society,
Institute. Yeah.
institute. So leaders may change, but society or an institution is perpetual. It is always supposed to live or act by certain principles. So if principles are followed, leaders may keep changing. But if we are ensured, there's assurance that this society stands for these principles. That guarantees some safety. But otherwise, like we saw, brahmanas are intentionally fragile socially, economically. That is how it's designed. So what are they dependent on? They are dependent on voluntary social trust. If people in society voluntarily feel, let's help them, they're nice people. That's how by goodwill of people, they'll continue. So therefore, you also need to have a vritti or a swabhava of being okay with that. Let's see what happens tomorrow. If you don't have that risk-taking ability, you cannot survive. So yeah, somewhere there has to be a deep dependence on Krishna.
Some anxiety will be there.
I mean, it'll become difficult to continue if you have that anxiety. So therefore, one should situate themselves in a varna which matches their nature. Sannyas is complete assurance that Krishna will protect me. So yeah, I mean, it's beautiful how nuanced varnashram is, how sensitive and delicate the roles and definitions are. It's a mastermind. It's a masterpiece of Krishna himself. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I know, I know. We cannot touch. We cannot touch controversial topics.
The expectation is there, and we have our own. Cannot. You promised us. It's all right.
Prabhu is taking actual case.